Hello and welcome to The Scaling Game. This is a podcast where we discuss how we've helped direct response advertisers find and fix what's preventing them from scaling their business. I'm Sammy Afrin. I'm the head of creative strategy at Deciphered. Alongside me in this episode and every other, you will see John Belcher. He's the founder of Deciphered. In today's episode, we are going to discuss how we help the high-ticket education business decrease their CPAs by 46%, allowing them to profitably advertise across 5 ad platforms, ultimately acquiring thousands of new leads a month. It's another great episode, but before we jump into it, I have to remind you to please go watch the first episode of The Scaling Game if you have not yet seen it. In that episode, we lay out the rules of the game, the definition of scale we work from, the overall philosophy of the scaling game. Watching this ensures that this case study and every other is as valuable to you as possible. So go watch it if you haven't. Otherwise, let's just jump right into this one. I will see you there. Okie dokie. Hello, John. Today we are talking high ticket education funnel. I know the client. You know the client. Let's look at this calculator here and break out the scenario with a little bit of context.
Yeah, so when we talk about high ticket sales, this is phone sales. So it's lead generation that then goes into a process where they're hopping on a phone call. They've done it a couple different ways, which we'll kind of talk through this. So it's not necessarily like book a call. It's kind of text chain, what have you. But ultimately, they have to get on a phone call. Sometimes it's one call close. Sometimes it's 2 call close. Yada, yada, right? But it's a typical high sales, phone sales process. High ticket sales, excuse me. And so I think what's important for this, we worked with this client for over 2 years. And what's important to me as we review this is this is the case study where the scaling game methodology and the things that we did, like this is where it was cemented. And for me, it was like, this is all about math, right?
Yep.
So I think what's important for clarification on this is we're picking up this case study actually in the middle of our tenure with this client. And the reason I think this is important for you to know is because we are always figuring out how to make our game better, right? We never feel that we are finished. We are always trying to learn and expand. And what I do think is really important that what we do is while a lot of other groups have a tendency to go very micro on like, we are the best at Facebook ads because we understand it so intimately. We're the opposite, where we're trying to go macro and go, how do we just get better at understanding this game as a whole, business, the economics of what's going on, market trends, macro, so we're better at projections, all of these things. And this for me was really important. This was the case study. I have a friend, I work in a shared working space, was sitting down and trying to figure out the next thing we could do for this client. And this is where the guy, former agency owner, was like, well, you have all the math in front of you. Why don't you just start using the math? And this was kind of this process of like, okay, I have all the stats here. Let's go more macro and start building mathematical models on top of this and tell us what we need to do next. And so once again, this for me is like going from being a player on the field to being, I'm a football guy, like the offensive coordinator that sits up in the box that gets to see everything. This was kind of a transformative moment for me. And so I'm excited to share this as far as like, we'd already worked with them for basically like a year, maybe a little bit more.
To this point, yeah.
Putting stuff together, more ads, more ad networks, what have you. But once again, the reason I want to share this is we are always working on our game. How do we get better at playing this game? And I think this was a really important step.
I couldn't agree more. So they come to us, again, this is about midway through our tenure, if you will, with this client. To this point, to this case study, most of our work had been on the creative front. Not that there weren't small funnel tweaks and things like that, but the bulk of our work for the first good bit, and they have a wonderfully oiled ad machine on their side of things, that was the bulk of the work. So after we realized, okay, this iterative process, it's keeping the boats afloat, but we want to find more. We want to find more juice to squeeze. We want to find more juice to squeeze. That's when we started to say, okay, then where do we need to focus? Like, where is our focus going to be placed that's going to allow the most juice to be squeezed? And that's when we start looking at these equation calculators, right? And we start breaking it out into progression rates. So when we broke out the funnel at this point in time, so again, after all the first several rounds of iterative ads and things like that, and we're starting to try to find deeper wins, we're breaking this funnel out into progression rates. What are we seeing? Lay out the math here for us.
couple things that we looked at. Ultimately, what we're doing is evaluating the impact of a particular change based on what it can do to lower CPAs, improve profitability so we can afford to scale, right? That's basically how our mathematical models are built. So a couple things I'm looking at, our ad costs per clicks are pretty high. That's honestly just this market. We have relatively low CTRs with the way this works. It's like these costs per clicks are probably where they're going to be. We have hundreds of ads that we've built with them. So this is not like an under tested process. It's just like, this is kind of what we're seeing after the results of a few years, right? So as we looked at this, I started to apply math, and there was 2 steps that stood out. So application rate and then opportunity. These are the 2 lowest progression rates, right? Running mathematical models, if we improve either one of these, it's going to have a really big impact on CPA. So I was like, okay, I have 2 areas that I could focus. I'm going to get rid of ad clicks because we've eliminated that one. How do I make a decision on what we're going to focus on? Well, we don't really have a whole lot of control over opportunity. So I'm going to cross it out, but I'm going to kind of talk through why. What's important for us to understand is we have a certain ability with our ads and our targeting to drive quality leads into a sales process. But there's also a huge reliance on the client, the sales team, to follow up, to vet, to get people through the process, etc. So while I'm calling out here, I don't like when agencies go, we send you leads and it's your problem, right? That's not, to me, something that I'm on board with. It is a dual relationship. It is our responsibility to work on it together to maximize this number. But we do not have 100% control of improving opportunity rates. So that's why I crossed it out. Is application rate, we do have 100% control with. It's ad, it's landing page, it's application process, what have you. So when we look at this, application is where we're going to focus our efforts. And I want to do one more step because this was the part for me that had changed. I saw the impact this could have on CPA, right? This has a massive opportunity to lower CPA. But shout out to my friend Carrie, who helped me see that looking at this based on revenue, we already know CPA, we already know average order value, so we can project what's this going to do to revenue, which at the end of the day, we're paid traffic people. We think about spend and CPAs. CEOs, CMOs, probably don't think about that stuff very much. They've heard it, but like it's not a thing for them. They care about dollars in the account, right? And so what I was able to do is go through and build a model off this that said for every 1% we increase this, we add $40,000 in revenue per month to this business, right? So for every 1% we improve application rate, as long as everything else stays the same and we don't start driving crappier traffic, we have the ability to grow the business by $40,000 a month. And it's really important. This was the part for me of saying, now I understand how to focus on what we do. In the last episode, I talked about features and benefits, right? This process is a feature where it helps us understand where to focus. But if I need to ask for resources or buy-in or a team's time or whatever, I need to be able to really clearly justify that to a CEO, a CMO, whatever.
Right.
Reduction in CPA, okay, cool, that's fine. If that's going to reduce our CPA by $100, cool. But like that doesn't land very well. Where if I say for every 1% we improve, it's going to grow your business by $40,000 a month without spending any more ad spend. I'll put that here.
Right. Yeah.
This was if we did plus $0 in ad spend. It was kind of cool. I sent this over. Immediate approval because we needed to get 2 software products to go do the things that we wanted to change. But like this for me was kind of this full circle moment where it was like, don't just talk about what could happen. Don't talk about your feature, John. Talk about the benefit for the clients. And it was just like one of those moments that was full circle of like, duh, why have I not been doing this before?
Well, it also so that's a fantastic, this 1% analysis is like a fantastic tool in regards to helping kind of prove on the client side, hey, this is what we need to be doing. It's also invaluable on the internal team side, right? Because this also allows us singular focus, which anybody who's been in this business long enough knows to have a singular thing to be focusing on is an incredible rarity, right? So we got to be able to go now, again, utilizing this 1% analysis. It's like, okay, the only thing we actually need to care about is increasing this application rate by 1%. We're not going to worry about ads. We're not going to worry about any of this other stuff, and being able to put the blinders on to all the other, there still may be other problems, but understanding this is, as my mom would say, the crocodile closest to the boat. Talk about invaluable to our internal team process, right? Because now everybody's brain is being maximized on focusing on a solution for one problem instead of everybody brainstorming what the problems are. It's become like just invaluable to our process. So,
yeah, and we talk about the 3 C's. We all need to have clarity on what the problem is. We need to have confidence that it's the problem that we should be solving. So it's the alligator we should be trying to shoot, right? That's super important. I don't think people understand when you get, I'm in the middle of a blog post talking about why try it all doesn't work.
yeah.
When you attempt to try it all, now you have way too many projects, you have competing initiatives, you have competing priorities. And then when you have that type of a mindset, someone comes back from a mastermind and something new gets thrown on top of the table, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's that part of just like, if you don't have clarity, stuff's not going to get done. If you don't have these numbers, you're not going to be confident in what the right, like, this is what we need to focus on because this is what the difference is going to be. And then finally, continuity.
Yeah.
And so this is something that Sammy preaches about all the time is we need to have continuity in our message from our ad to our audience, to our landing pages, through our sales process. That's how sales are made. It's with continuity and messaging and even just like conviction, right?
Yeah.
That's what we have the ability to work through. And so I agree, like this has been so clutch in us being like, we're only going to do 3 things this month. It's these 3 and this is why. And this is honestly what's helped us continue to elevate our level of production in 2024.
Yeah.
We're doing more than we've ever done before on results because of this process.
It just makes it very easy to identify where to put your nose down and work. So we now identified our way. We're trying to improve this application rate by 1% in order to hopefully add $40,000 to a month to the bottom line, right? So why is this application rate as low as it is? That kind of has to become, now we have to take off the problem finding hat and put on kind of the problem solving hat, right? We have to figure out why this issue is presenting itself. I know the answer, but I'm going to let you walk through your thought process in real time.
So I think first thing off the rip is when we see an application rate of 10%, like when we look at an opt-in, we would want it to be 20% plus. So like from a benchmark perspective, this was low, but there's a couple things to note. This is a pretty long application. It was quite a few fields. People had to work through to submit to be able to move forward in the process. And then on top of it, to me, it was kind of cold, where it was just like, here's our message about, it was not engaging, right?
Okay.
And when we're talking about applications for education businesses, you can have like the Harvard approach where it's like, we have tons of applications, like tons of people apply and we only select a very small amount. So you should apply too to see if you can get in. You can take that approach, right? It's possible, it's doable. Obviously it works if you have a brand like Harvard or other, renowned schools. But when you don't have that type of a brand message, just being like apply and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's not super engaging. Part of this company's, message is like, we're different from traditional education. And so to me, it was like part of the message didn't line up with the application process, right?
Right.
All of the steps, like when we look at this, all of our steps were going to be the same. So it wasn't like we're going to go drastically change the process. But I'm going to say the feeling of the application process was what felt off to me. Like that was my hypothesis of we can do this in a better fashion.
Well, this client also has a fantastic thumb on the the culture, the zeitgeist, if you will, of their market, right? So their ads, their presence within social media, all these things is really well articulated, right? Really well established. It's very personal. They know exactly who they're talking to on that level, right? So then you're saying, well, we have this very personal, very like almost kind of chummy buddy feeling on the ad level, right? And then you get to just an impersonal application and you're like, wait a second, this isn't delivering the same like buddy kind of quote unquote feeling, that we got. So again, a feather in the cap of continuity, even though it wasn't like an ad to a sales message, it was an ad to an application process. Even the phrasing of questions can matter. And that seems like that was kind of the play here.
Yeah, and I feel a little like maybe woo-woo saying this, but I'm not particularly like a brand marketing person, right?
Yeah.
That's just not really, I'm about numbers, direct response, revenue, what have you. This was just one where like, this doesn't feel the way it should. And a lot of people are like, dude, it's an opt-in form. What are you talking about? But I think the ability to go a level deeper and talk with people about like, what are you trying to build? And that should be thought out and carried through every single step in your sales process. It's really important. And that's ultimately what this came down to is like, this feels cold and impersonal, like you said.
Yeah.
We believe that we have an opportunity to do this better and give us a shot, because with every 1% we improve this, we're going to add $40,000 to your business.
Right. So our why is, I think there's also a little bit of a visual component to the application as well, right? It's like a wall of text. It was like very visually inundating as well when you came to the page. So we're going to chalk it up to visual inundation plus just cold, impersonal application process, right? That's our why. Let's formulate this why. Let's now transition into making that into a hypothesis. What was your hypothesis on how to address this situation?
Okay. So when we think about our how process, right? This is about selling. This is about sales, right? How do we sell someone? So instead of we're not selling this education program. We're selling them filling in this application, right? And so whenever we write our sales letter, we start with the 12-step foolproof sales letter, right? The first thing is get their attention. So with the current application, it's like, hey, what's your name? What's your email? What's your phone number? What's your current occupation? Blah, 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 right? I'm not very inclined to say, let me just give you my information. So for me, I was like, how do we take this and get them started? If we get them to start, we're going to have a heck of a lot higher chance of getting them to finish. So I wanted to start the application with a question, right? And so we went through quite a few iterations of this process, starting with like relevant questions about what this education program was about, all the way out to like, do you feel like you get paid what you deserve? Right? All through that gamut. And so the first piece was catching their attention to get them to start the process. We felt like if we got more people to start, we would get more people to finish, right? So I'm going to say, get them to start is priority number one. Then number two is keeping them going.
I'm not seeing this on the screen. Maybe it's just not updating quickly enough, but I am not seeing your notes here on the screen.
Maybe something got disconnected from Wi-Fi. We'll see if it comes through. Anyway, so number one, get them to start. Number two, keep them going.
Keep them going. Got it.
Right? And so when we talk about that, from that perspective, the initial application was all the questions all at the same time, right? It was one, as you said, big wall of text. Like, that's what that was. And so when we're talking about those things, that's a big problem. We need to be able to go in here, and I'm just going to try and refresh this to see if this will.
I was going to do the same thing.
So I just decided to say, hey, let's take this application and bring it down into a series of questions to see what can take place here, and is this going to make a difference? And so we decided to move towards a form builder that would allow us to populate the questions one at a time so they didn't
Right.
feel overwhelmed. They could continue to move through, right? That was really important for us to work through that. And then the final piece for number 3 was urgency, scarcity. Hopefully this will show up at some point, but if not, so get them started, keep them going, and then urgency or scarcity. And so the last question in the application process is all about their contact information, right? And so what was really important for us is to ensure that when we worked through this process, we were making it something that made them want to complete. And I think the biggest thing is part of the application process is asking for a phone number. People are typically fine to give you name, email, what have you, but phone number is a personal thing. And so what was important for us is to say, is there a reason? Like, are you going to get priority, what have you? That was really important for us. Yeah, so get them to start, keep them going, and then scarcity, urgency. That was just a really, really important process for us to create a message ensuring that they would get moved to the top of the line, quick reach out, find out super quickly if they qualified. That was kind of how this process worked to get us to where we are. And so once again, what we did here is we say, okay, we're going to change the application process, like duh, right? But there was a lot of thought process behind this, and how do we engineer something that's better that gets people to want to continue to move forward in the process?
So we talk about this. Wait, let me get my mic closer. Sorry, I'm taking over your scribe as well now. We talked about this actually yesterday on a phone call. Kind of. Oh my God, I just totally lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Trying to just edit that whole part out. Pretend I said nothing. I'll edit it out. My thought just went boom as soon as I scrolled down. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep on keeping on. So we've got our how. We've got them started, keep them going, and then instill a sense of urgency again. So that feeling is right. So that someone is coming into this application with like kind of I don't want to say like a sense of anticipation, but kind of, right? Like you want a little bit of a like bubbling excitement of like when they submit it, there's almost like a question of, am I going to get it? That's kind of, I think the goal is you were trying to create that anticipatory feeling, right? Of application. And you managed to do that by way of format as well as the question changing.
Yeah, and so when we talk about scarcity, urgency, I'm trying to come up with what the right word is, but ultimately, when we think about traditional education, you apply to go to college somewhere, you send off your stuff, and you hear back, 5-6 months later.
Right.
The thought process was like, we're different. You'll hear back tomorrow. Are you a good fit? Right? And so just one of those things of
timeliness, maybe.
Yeah. Setting expectations. There's a sense of like, yeah, I want to know the answer to this. Am I going to be a good fit for this? So that was kind of how we looked at how do we change this process to improve our conversion rates? And then, as you said, format was a big part of this. So we looked at a bunch of form builders. How do we do this differently? How do we control everything? What integrates? How do we have the right tracking, all of those components? So we landed on a form builder that allowed us to go through and break out all of these different questions that made it really easy to complete on a phone, gave us all the information we needed for ad network reporting, all those different components. So it was part form, part function. And we were able to kind of go from there. But that's ultimately like how we designed that experiment.
Yeah. You scroll down. I'll keep writing for you, but you just scroll down there to the bottom. So, okay, we implemented, again, guys, recall, we've already, like the CPA we're showing at the top there of, what was it?
So 16.
44, like that was already like, that was already optimized by us to a point. So again, we're coming into this after about a year, I would say, of good, consistent work from the more top of funnel pivots and things like that. I would say this is the first time that we had the idea to do a real mid to low funnel optimization effort. And I'll keep scribing. You talk through the results because this was night and day.
Yeah. So the process on the testing side, typically we like to have tests that we set up where we have unique IDs for everything, unique ad IDs. But there was so much traffic going to this initial application page. It was like, we have to do a split test on this. We just have to start rotating a small percentage of traffic to see what happens across the board.
Right.
And so the first day set it live, conversion rate was a little bit better. had, I think it was like 5% of traffic, right? And I was like, okay, let's up it to 10. And so we just kind of went through this process over the next few days that we just started upping it. And every time we upped it, we saw the conversion rates continue to get better and better and better. And so we got to the point after about 5 days where it was a 50-50 split. And the conversion rate was 30 to 40% higher than the control, right? So what we're showing here on the numbers is we started at a 10% application rate and we got to the point where it's 13. And so a couple things to note with that. Alongside, and this is why we really are careful about who we work with on the partner side, is in addition to seeing the application rate went up, the opportunity rate also went up from 8 to 9%, which looks like 1%, but that's a really big percentage increase inside of there. And part of this was having people that were more qualified and engaged in the opt-in process. But part of this is we have a client that works with us that when we point something out and we say, hey guys, we flagged 2 things at the beginning of this month. The application rate is an opportunity and the opportunity rate's an opportunity. Well, their sales team set to work, cleaning up their processes, focusing on reaching out more frequently, those types of things.
Yeah.
That now we have a compounding win that our CPAs went from $1,600 down to $900, right? Massive change within 30 days. Cost per customer came down. And so it's really important with this. I noted earlier, for every 1% we improve performance on the application side, we projected a $40,000 improvement. So that would have been roughly a $120,000 improvement in revenue. We actually did more like 150, 160 because the opportunity rate improved as well with 0 extra ad spend.
Pretend that's pretty, right? But I wrote plus 150K there.
Yeah. Massive, right? So we were
monthly.
Able to, yes, monthly. And that's no extra ad spend, right? This has become an absolutely crucial, it's absolutely crucial optimization for this business, especially because like everyone sees in Q4, cost per leads go up. Our cost per leads in Q4 this year are less than half of what they were last year. And so it's just one when we talk about volume, the ability to stay up there and continue to move sales and all of those different components has just made a massive difference. And once again, what we love about working with this client is they're working on their end all the time to improve the closing side. And we're working on the front end on the traffic, the messaging, the lead quality, the costs. It's just made a massive difference.
For sure. So let's break it down into our 3 kind of post-optimization areas. Profitability. Check, 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 check.
Yeah, and with this particular client, we had the capacity to drive a ton more leads at this cost. They're not going to try and double the size of their sales force. So this was pocketing it, right? We've increased spend a little bit over the course of the year, but this was a choice of like, hey, we want to be more profitable. Cool, we're going to pocket this. And that has been, once again, in 2024, we see a lot of companies' margins are receding. This company actually grew, right? This is going to be the most profitable year in, I think, 3 or 4 years. It's a really big deal. And so this is one that we're really proud of on that end.
Yeah, this has been, again, we've gone through several phases of, I don't want to like narrow it down. We've gone through several phases again of optimization with them, where in this instance, they chose to pocket the profit. There have been many other instances where optimizations have resulted in decisions where they decided to reinvest and we grew through volume, right? But our game lately has been ultimately trying to achieve that true textbook definition of scale with this client, right? Giving you higher volume, lower CPAs with no additional dollars in ad spend. And this was textbook example of that. So check. Rhythm. I'm going to write the checks while you talk about how impactful that was.
Yeah. So when you increase lead volume by 30% overnight, right? So I think what's really important about this, at one point we were running 89 different ads with this company across 5 different ad networks. We have a couple best performers, right? It's just like, that's how this shakes out, is you have your 80-20 rule.
Yep.
But for our for the 20% that does 80% of the volume, what's important as we work through this is we've got an increase in 30% of lead volume literally overnight, right? Let's call it over the course of 5 days. Like, that was massive. And so for the 20% that produces 80% of the volume, I did an analysis. The conversion rate on those ads actually went up by 50 to 60%.
Damn.
Because they were now getting so many leads, right? So it took the overall optimization, and then it was getting enough conversion event data that it went to the next level. That was just a really big, important part of this process.
So again, the idea that by not just saying we give you the leads you get and you take it, we worked with the client to do the proper song and dance to ensure that we were sending high quality leads that actually met the needs that their sales team was going to need on the receiving end of that, right? And by way of doing that, guess what? By giving the algorithm better inputs, guess what we got? Better outputs. I'll be damned.
Yeah. And I literally 20 minutes ago had a friend text me and be like, how do we just get people who have over a 600 credit score, right? Like, that was, everyone right now is like, well, we want to get more people that are in this little area. And it's like, cool, you can try audience tools and this and that. But ultimately, if you design the process to be more attractive to people that are better fits, you're going to get more of them. Also, you're not taking your potential audience and cutting it by this much, which is going to skyrocket your CPMs.
Costs, yeah.
And so it's just kind of one where it's like, anyone can sell to people who have, like, in theory, anyone can close. Like, well, we only can close people with us. Well, figure out how to make your marketing.
Yeah, that's who you're talking to, right? Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. No, it's such an interesting game, a song and dance there, right? Because there is an element of, and I think this has become so much more important in the post iOS 14, kind of just like as we've kind of lost a lot of our targeting options and things like that. You actually took a course a couple years ago. This is right after the iOS 14 stuff through Facebook. And they talked about how in the future, which is now, that messaging was going to be your targeting, that your messaging on your ads was going to be your targeting. And I think if you can imagine if you can kind of keep that in the back of your head, right, as you're developing these marketing messages and all of your systems and things like that, and realize that everything that you're putting into your ads manager from a campaign build perspective is being analyzed and reviewed by the algorithm to be put in front of the people that algorithm thinks are the most relevant, right? That means you have to be speaking clearly, directly to the people you want to be talking to. The algorithm doesn't know otherwise, because it can now discern message. Like, the machine learning and the bots and all that crap is good enough now that it can literally go and discern the message that you're putting through on your ad, be it a video, an image, like whatever. And then it goes and matches that with the people that it has data on the other side, right? So it's like, again, just clarity of message, understanding sales psychology, understanding the why you're doing something. You don't even have to use, how often do we even really do? We almost only broad target anymore, So it's like, we're really, if you want to talk about algorithm from a different perspective, allowing the algorithm to latch on to your messaging because it's so strong and clear that it can go and put it in front of the appropriate people. And that's what's happening here, is because we've really defined those people. Our messaging is super clear. It just compounds to this day, every single day, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. It's like an invaluable, piece of this puzzle for sure. So,
and just one quick side note on that one. If you've seen a Facebook outage in the last couple of years, when I say outage, they'll have a bug. A lot of times what it does with ads, it'll be like a gray screen, and it'll have one or two words that their machine learning or AI, once again, I think it's AI, has assigned to your ad. So it's like
a keyword, basically.
It's essentially, they boil it down to like one or two keywords. And then what they're doing is they're showing that to people that have interacted with those type of things in the past, right?
Right.
That was really cool, seeing an outage and being like, oh, it's this simple, that they're taking your message, they're coming it down to one or two words, and this is how they're choosing to deploy it. Yeah. That's just really important when you're considering how you're building things out. So.
Yeah, and again, not villainizing the algorithm, but instead learning how to work with it, befriend it, and use it to your advantage, your company's advantage, right? So let's pivot to the last arm of this here and talk about diversification. Because again, another frickin' like textbook case study on platform diversification for sure. Definitely message stacking. They don't have SKUs to break out into, but definitely worth talking about it. Are you back? You're back.
Yes, I'm back. So message and platform. This company has one SKU, so SKU's not an option with this one.
Yeah.
But when we talk about this message, we have dozens and dozens of ads running at all times.
Yep.
And what's important about it and what we're continuing to push on is how do we continue to reach out to more and more and more pockets of people? Because they have one core message that's worked really well, and it's been reskinned, so it's not chopping 5 seconds and replacing the intro. It's been reskinned. But what we're trying to do now is take an approach where we're saying, okay, this is works, and we've got 30 different ads running that are all producing at some level. But we really want to continue to figure out the next piece is how do we reach markets that are different than just this message?
Yeah.
So you and I sat down and we have 15 new angles to test, right?
Yep.
That are focused on very different audiences. And so that's our goal for us is like, how do we continue to find ways to tap into different audiences? And so
It's like thinking about, especially in particular to this client, right? It's been the message diversification game has been identifying what I'm going to call like adjacent audience populations, right? Like they're not the exact same, but they're touching on one side, right? Like the complementary with an E, like it's right next to our ideal audience. It's right next to people that could like kind of almost like building a Venn diagram of intersections of audience segments and trying to figure out how to, like you said, get outside of that main pocket because we're fishing in there. We've been fishing in there, guys. He's not exaggerating when he says 30 ads that are performing. It's like a real number. So it's, again, just trying to figure out how to make the core, not keep the business true, keep the value prop true, keep all things true, but position it in a means that it appeals to people in a different place. And it's not, I mean, it sounds easy to say like that, but we've actually had a lot of like back and forth and trying to figure out how to do that. Sometimes it's not so straightforward because it does require knowing. I think the only reason we've been able to do this, honestly, not the only reason, but a big part of the reason that we've been able to do this exercise so seamlessly is because we've had the client for so long. It's a true benefit of working for someone for 2 years. We know this business. You know, like you know the business and the numbers of this business as well as you do your own. And that's, again, the benefit of like long tenure with clients is that the longer we work together, the more wins we deliver, the better we all get, right? So I'm going to let you jump into the actual platform diversification portion of it now because, I mean, what isn't on there?
Yeah, so this is a client that on the platform side, so Facebook, major producer.
Yeah.
But when we came in, so there was 2 networks when we came in, Facebook and YouTube were producing. They'd kind of fallen off. So I would say that it was on the back end of the iOS 14 stuff that there was some performance there, but it definitely was super focused on like 2 ads.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden cost per leads, it started to go up and it just wasn't, there was some really weird conversion tracking stuff and just things were not being done in a way that made a ton of sense. So we kind of came back and rebuilt it. And so during the majority of the year, Facebook's responsible for like 55 to 60% of leads and sales. And then we kind of have this cascade of YouTube's after that, and then TikTok, and then Snapchat, and then search. And then we've been able to get a little bit of demand gen layered in there. But most companies we see are like 90% plus Facebook. Maybe they have Facebook and YouTube, right? We really try and focus on getting your number one ad network below 50% of your total overall volume, and then filling in the rest with other networks. And what's important about that is they're not all going to produce at the same level of Facebook, but if their production can all be at the same CPA, now it's additive, right? And so it's been really important for us with this is having a process to test stuff on Facebook, figure out what works, and then migrate it across to the other networks to be able to have this consistency. This has been huge for us is having this breadth. In addition, so since it's a sales team, sometimes they'll go, hey, we need more leads because we added a new rep. If you're so dependent on one ad network, okay, cool, we have to go add an extra 20% of spend a day. All of a sudden, you just break the campaigns that are working,
Yeah.
your lead costs go through the roof, and now everything's
Yeah.
thrown off. Where if we need to increase by 20%, okay, we're going to put 10% more on Facebook divided by 30 ads. And then we're going to have 4% on YouTube and 3% on TikTok
Right.
and 2% on Snapchat, right?
Right.
It's just made that process of scaling spend. It's way more consistent. It's way more efficient. It's all of those different components. It's been really crucial for us to continue to be successful month after month, year after year. And we're now at the point from a projections perspective, we can figure out like my projections have been within 2%, 90 days out of like, this is what's going to happen this month and here's what we're going to see. So that's just been a really big, important component for us in being able to produce consistently at cost so they have predictability on their back end.
For sure. So let's zoom out at to the scaling ladder here, and let's kind of lay out the scaling process over the course of this particular case study. This scaling ladder could be twice as long if we included everything we've done with this client. But let's focus particularly on this case study. So we came in here and we're looking at the application rate being at the 10%, right? That's kind of our first area of emphasis.
I'm going to put issue, but I'm going to put it in quotes.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a problem. It was just the bottleneck, right?
Right.
So first thing we did here is we did new application, right? It got us to here. And then we focused on, I guess we didn't scale spend with them a ton. My bad. So new application took us to the next level. And then we really focused on message stacking.
Yeah.
Which took us to here. And then we focused on platform diversification. So we're really healthy across these. And then this is finally where we're starting to increase spend because there are more salespeople. But once again, it's like, this is a game. You'll see, once again, we're using the same tools, but we're using them in different points for clients based off what their goals are, right? This client was like, hey, we just want to take this win that you found and pocket the profit. Cool. No worries. We're going to focus on message stacking, platform diversification, make you healthy. It's easy to run. Oh, okay. Now you're at the point where you need more spend because you have more sales reps. Cool. So this was months after the win.
Right.
That's how we went back and deployed resources at that point.
Right. But I think it's important to note that there wasn't a lull in business due to the lack in ad spend, guys. Like this is
Correct.
the epitome again of scale. This business was growing despite the fact that we were not throwing $1 more per month at ads. Like that is ideal, dare I say?
I mean, it's what what everyone's
it's
trying
what we
to
get paid
do,
to
right?
do. Yeah, exactly right. So again, this is a really beautiful picture of what happens when you have a reciprocal client relationship. This is an example of what happens when you allow your paid traffic efforts to inform your overall business decisions. This is an example of what happens when you allow, really work together for long periods of time. You said in the beginning that this case study was the first one where you were like, this case study was where really, I guess, the mathematical modeling started to come into play. I'm going to assume that you're going to echo that now as your biggest takeaway from this case study, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So
yes, so that ability to evaluate things and say what's the true impact going to be on the business if we focus here. But on top of that, I think what's important for me is this is a little bit of the opposite of what most clients are looking for. It's like find a win, go increase ad spend.
yeah,
This just showed me once again, it's like the process is still going to be the same. You're just telling us like more juice, less juice. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter for us. We don't get paid on percentage of spend. So we're not sitting here going, we need to spend more so we can make more. It's like, how do we make your business healthier? Because when we are operating in the same fashion, like we make more money when you make more money.
right.
And the best path is how do we go through and make that happen, right? We're not sitting here chomping at the bit saying, how do we rack up your ad bill to try and be able to make more? It's you tell us what your priorities are, and then we'll determine our game plan off of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we kind of sit in the seat of we let our data, the company plus client plus data equals like the compass, right? Like that's going to show us the direction we need to go, and then we're the kind of the captains that steer the ship and make the decisions on actually doing the things to make it happen. So when I look at this client in particular, what I've learned from this client, again, I'm gonna echo the value of blinders in the internal team process, right? Like the ability to say, hey, team, entire team, we are focusing on this issue. What ideas does everybody have? Not just the people, not just Sammy and creative strategy, not just John and client strategy. You know, Ross, what media buy? What do you have? Amy, what do you have going on? Like really reaching out to our team and allowing everyone to kind of have a say, because in those, not only does it instill kind of, it's good for team building. It's good to help make sure that all teams, we're all focused on solving the same problems and all those things. But a lot of times the people that aren't necessarily as close to the process as you and I are have really invaluable insights. And they're oftentimes kind of, I would say, afraid to speak on them because they're not sure how relevant their idea is to the problem that's being solved. But when you just clear the air and you say, hey, this is the problem we're being solved, people come to you way more confidently with solutions as well. So it makes my job a hell of a lot easier because the confidence from you downstream is, 10x what it was without having the guidance of the math and the mathematical modeling to focus us. So
yeah, and one point to add to that, I was in the middle of writing a blog post that's going to get kicked back because I decided to change what this is about. But I did talk about the importance of collaboration in this experiment creation process. And so as you talked about, having an analytical brain there, having a creative brain there, having a process brain there is super helpful. My favorite people to have a part of this process is customer service, because they actually are talking to the customers and they can go, well, you have this idea on the marketing front, but that's actually nothing to do with people are talking about us on the back end. And it's like, sometimes you're going to come up with things that customer service hasn't heard about, thought about, but sometimes it's super valuable where it's like, well, we think part of the reason that we're not having our purchase rate isn't high enough is because we don't have Apple Pay and Google Pay in our checkout. And then customer service can go, well, we actually only get asked about that like twice a month. So you could spend a ton of time integrating it, but it's probably barely going to do anything. Versus this other thing of better presenting your value in the checkout process probably has way more impact. That's just one thing to throw out, of like bringing different brains in. Ray Dalio is a person that I learned about for like having the best ideas run your company. We really love to come in and have different people get perspectives to figure out how do we improve performance.
Absolutely. And again, it's all the easier to do when you know you're working from a true North Star, when you're working from properly allocated and analyzed data, which is why our entire business is built upon math and numbers. So unless you have anything to add, I think we put a pin in it here. This is a long one. And then we will pivot to our final case study episode for the time being in the next one.
Talk soon.
All right. He's out of here, guys. See you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for watching The Scaling Game. John and I know that time is your most valuable currency, so we do not take your attention lightly. If you could do us a solid and drop a comment below, letting us know what you loved, what you hated, whatever it is, leave the comment so that we can read that comment and then go and use it to inform our future content. We appreciate that as well. If you have interest in working with the team at Deciphered, you can head on over to deciphered.com. That's Deciphered with a Y. Fill out the lead form, and then we will reach out to you to schedule a feasibility assessment. Outside of that, guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one.